I can't walk down the street anymore. It's a nightmare. Can you imagine, you go to a Catholic boarding school that's a
Yeah.
comprehensive, your dad's army, um, you're gay or you're different. Not a great experience. And then I was advised to go back into the closet when I went to my first law firm. The shirts I wore, the ties I had, the suits I had, the length of my hair, that I clicked my fingers as I walked down the corridor, that I took my shoes off when I was sitting at the desk. These were all like things that the firm were not happy about. And it was only really when I got to about 24, 25, 26 that I realized the law thing really wasn't for me, probably saving me from something quite significant. I just thought, you know what, I am going to be fabulous. I think that's really interesting. I'd quite like to know, what is it like to talk about rugby all the time?
Hello, hello, and welcome to the latest episode of But Is It Legal with me, your host, Simon Marshall. I'm the founder of TBD Marketing, and you probably know that because you've looking at the podcast that we released. Thanks for joining us today. We'll never take the time that you give us for granted, and we'll use it wisely, we promise. Today, I'm joined by the learning director at Linklaters, Patrick McCann. Patrick, will you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your day job? What do you spend your time doing, Patrick?
Yeah, hi. So, as you say, I'm Patrick. I head up the learning function here at Linklaters. I also co-run the knowledge and learning function as well. So that's about 150 people, and about 40 of those sit within pure learning. My responsibilities are the strategic implementation of all of our learning activity. So that can be from supporting technical legal training in the various practice groups by making sure the logistics work and having my coordination team sort that out, and also dealing with the sorts of things we want our lawyers to be learning and how they learn, the channels of that, the interrelationships with lawyer regulatory authorities as well, the working together with our DE&I and HR teams to make sure that those things are sorted and that we support underrepresented communities, etc. And then you also work with legal and risk. You also work delivering things for clients, etc. So it's quite a big job. And I'm not going to do that cliche thing of saying every day is different, because it's not really that different every single day. I don't believe anybody does that. A lot of it is a lot of emails, a lot of meetings, a lot of having to think about things and then do the thing. So it's sort of head and hand stuff. You've got to think about it, and then you've just got to make sure that the typing gets done. Um,
I
so
always think that's quite a big role, isn't it, at any firm, because of the nature of working in a knowledge industry. Do you ever feel like there's quite a lot that rides on it for learning and learning development?
yeah, I do, and I think on the learning side, there are two or three aspects to it that I think are interesting. So number one, most of the technical legal training is delivered within a practice group,
Yeah.
and often on the job, and often osmotically, and without sort of formal parameters around it. And then also, of course, every 6 months, every year, we've got foundation courses for the juniors as they're coming up. And then there'll be an act that changes, or a case that comes out, or a new precedent that we create, and that needs training on as well, that sort of stuff that's happens at a point in time. So that's one thing. But then the other thing I think is, a real challenge that I think all law firms are facing, and that really I don't know what the answer to is just the time poorness of the lawyers in particular, and the fact that not only are they time poor, but they're really measured on where they're spending their time,
Yeah.
and there's always something that might lead to an invoice, that will there's a temptation to make that a priority. So I'm constantly fighting that thing, where I've got to deliver it all in 15 minutes, and all of that stuff. I had a brilliant example. Admittedly, this was quite a while ago, but I had a partner ask me, not in this firm, asked me if I could deliver some management training for the associates. And I said, "Oh, what do you want?" And we agreed he needed people, financial, business development, client relationships, projects, um, thought leadership, presence in market. I think there was something else about DE and I as well. And I said, "Oh, how long can I have them for?" And he said, "Oh, I could give you them for half a day." And I said, "Well, that's great, because I do have a supplier that can do that." And he was really excited. And I said, "They also offer a 3-hour law degree. So should we get them to do that as well?" And at that point, Went a bit quieter. So we're always playing with that as well. Just the time poorness and the vastness of all of it. I think
It's a challenge. I mean, for marketing guys like me, it's a challenge as well. Like, I don't know about you, but when I go into a training call or if I go into a meeting, I mentally tot up the value of like who's in the room, the time that we've got on. I do, Patrick. I think, well, that person's hourly rate is roughly this, and I mentally look around the room. And I think it's 30 people in here, and they're all charging 500 quid now. There's a lot of money, right?
yeah,
But equally, then I think there's a quid pro quo with learning development, isn't it? It's like, look, there's a lot of money in the room. Let's take this session really seriously, right? I don't want you to survive this session. I want you to flourish. How do you get people to come to those sessions, or how do you get to create those sessions so that people really kind of, suck the juice out of it, take the most out of them?
yeah. I mean, there's a variety of different things. So having a hook helps. Having a topicality around your topic area is helpful. So either that it's in the news or something's happening, or it's topical for that person because they're on a matter and it has resonance, or because they're at a stage in their career where they're realizing that something needs to be shown, and so they'll come to you that way. So definitely the hook is important. The way you package is important. The convenience and the channel that you use can be important. I mean, I think, Simon, through the work that I do, I say work, but the ramblings that I put on LinkedIn, I try and get some learning in there as well, in a minute or two, that ordinarily would take me maybe half an hour to do in depth. And obviously my LinkedIn posts are nowhere near as good as that, but they do get some of the learning. So we have to be quite careful around how we do that, quite thoughtful, I should say, around that. And then, I mean, they always say if you get an important partner in the room, that helps, particularly if the partner is delivering some of the content. And I think that's sort of true. I think it's possibly overstated. Um, my sense is that the generations as they are coming in are less, um, should we say, influenced slash manipulated slash driven by hierarchy and seniority and age. So I think that might be tailing off a little bit. So for me, it is about, is there a hook? Is there content that works? And then we have to look at the duration, so that, and that is where I have a real ethical dilemma, that they'll want all of drafting skills in 20 minutes, and I just can't do anything meaningful within that time. And then, of course, the main way to go is to have it in a different country, and have it over 2 days, ideally on a Thursday or Friday, so they can stay on and have the weekend with their other half in Munich or wherever. That's the easiest way to get them in the room. And we are finding stuff that goes onto a learning management system and keeps reminding you helps as well.
Do you think are we living in a golden era of kind of L&D at law firms now? Are lawyers better trained than they've ever been before?
I think the golden era was about 10 years ago. And I think that was because 10 years ago, there was a real client demand for evidence of competence, performance of the lawyers. And it would be in every pitch, tell me what training you do, tell me how you do it, deliver some of that stuff to us. What are your CPD records like, etc. And then that created the partner impetus to make sure things were done. That has definitely faded away. I don't get as many pitch requests.
Is it assumed now? Is that what's going on? Are people just assuming that that's taken place, or?
I think the conversation has turned. There's definitely an assumption that everybody can do everything, whether that's accurate or not, I'm not sure. Certainly in a firm like mine, it's going to be pretty good, and there's not going to be much that goes wrong because there are too many guardrails around everything that happens, and there's too much good stuff that's available for people to work through matters, etc. I think it's more that the conversation has changed, and the conversation up until a couple of years ago was much more around people, around the DE&I space. My sense is the conversation is going to go now more towards value, and both in terms of cost and in terms of work product, work service being given. So, intimate understanding of the client. How is the thing being created? How are those documents being reviewed, etc. And so the whole sort of dawn of Gen AI is happening, and then we have a generational difference where I think the deal that we have with our, the generations that are coming in will change, and that will require a recalibration of how we work together, how we do with each other, and what that sort of contract or agreement is between us. So I think that will mean learning and HR processes and people stuff will come a bit higher on the agenda. But it's been big on L&D, big on DE&I, and I think it's going to come back to sort of performance and people. That's my best guess.
It's cyclical then, really. It comes back round again to those kind of classic themes, the things that you were doing maybe a few years ago again.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in 5 law firms.
I didn't want to ask, Patrick. I thought so. Might be
To be fair, I've worked in 5 law firms, and generally I've been asked to go and work in another one, and that's why. But I've worked in each of them for at least 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and this one over 8. I think I'm the longest holder of this particular position in my firm. And they're all different, and they're all completely the same as well. And so you do see themes coming in. There is. It's a cliche to say a pendulum, but there is, because I've been working for 34 years around law firms. There isn't that much that I see that is necessarily completely new. Or if it is completely new, the reaction to it I have seen before in other aspects. So I don't know. The big 4 accountants are going to take over all law firms. American law firms are going to take over all the UK law firms. Y2K, Gen AI, value for money, outsourcing, insourcing, increasing sophistication of in-house lawyers, different demands around working practices, COVID, etc. All of these things will come in like sort of comets to destroy everything, but the reactions tend to be fairly similar. In my case, it's complete panic for a couple of weeks.
I doubt that somehow.
Yeah, it's part of being ADHD is that the moments of high drama are often and not very far apart with me. But so that's one of the things I have to calibrate. But it's the reaction that I think it tends to stay the same. It's just what the thing is that is changing.
You've worked at 5 law firms. What brought you to the law in the first place? What attracted you to it as an industry?
Well, I was it was Petrocelli. So Petrocelli was a Californian American TV series, lasted two series. It had an attorney who I think was also a detective, and his wife ended up being Donna Krebs or Donna Ray Krebs in Dallas. But anyway, she was his wife in this. And I saw that when I was about 9 or 10. I think I probably saw it on British Forces broadcasting television in Germany, but it would have been broadcast in English. My dad was Army, and I just made a connection. I thought, oh, that looks like a cool job. I was obsessed with American accents at the time, and I think that was one of the few American television programs that got shown. And so I thought, well, that's what I want to do. And you can imagine, when you've got two parents who are great but not university experience, when their son who's doing quite well at school says, I want to be a lawyer, well, no one's going to question that for very long. So then you end up on a sort of a path. I did sufficiently well at school, was sufficiently compliant and helpful, and have always been articulate, that I was able to persuade myself into a university, and from the university into a law firm. And it was only really when I got to about 24, 25, 26 that I realized the law thing, the rules, the regulations, the speed of it, the stress of it really wasn't for me. I've got much more of a right brain mind. I'm much more creative and scatty and out there, and I don't really deal well with guardrails particularly. And I don't deal that well with high points of stress. That I ended up coming out of that and moving into commercial conferencing, and from there I got called back into a law firm. And then it just happened that what's happened from there is that every time someone's picked up the phone and they've noticed me, and I've gone and had a conversation, and a few conversations later, I get an email, or in my day, an envelope, and then you sign that and you go and work for that firm. So that's sort of how that happened.
We first came across each other, I think, through LinkedIn, and I was really intrigued by some of the stuff that you share. I love your inception strategy. I'll just drop a couple of minute kind of ideas in this post that appears to be about something completely different. I have to say it's my strategy too in relation to marketing. So I think that's that affinity. But I love. I think the laws has been really good at allowing people with a bit more colour and some flamboyance to them as well to succeed and flourish as well. Have you felt as though that you've always able to been yourself over the course of your career, or has that been
No.
more freely expressed today, or how is it?
So definitely not really able to be myself as a kid. Can you imagine, you go to a Catholic boarding school that's a
Yeah,
comprehensive, your dad's army, um, you're gay or you're different. Not a great experience. Then when you do come out at university, the generation above you dies, and um, then you get. So I was out at uni. I did really well. My grades once I came out just exponentially went up, right? Because I was just confident in who I was. I felt that I had a voice and I could express it. And honestly, just grades went from very average to pretty good. Um, and then I was advised to go back into the closet when I went to my first law firm, and got outed there by someone that was a trainee with me, but he'd been at my university. That was actually a really good way to come out because I wasn't seen as being the troublemaker, but I was. I joined a law firm because I thought that law firm was around individuality and excitement. They did entertainment law and they had a purple brochure, and that seemed to be enough for me. And they were not. It was very much you do it this way, etc. And it was that destroyed me actually, that job. And I became a little bit rebellious because I really wanted to inhabit who I was, and that was being denied. So the shirts I wore, the ties I had, the suits I had, the length of my hair, that I clicked my fingers as I walked down the corridor, that I took my shoes off when I was sitting at the desk. These were all like things that the firm were not happy about. And so, uh, after a while, we parted ways. And then when I went into commercial conferencing, I worked with someone called Lindsay Scott, who's chief executive now of 39 Essex Street. And I credit her with, I'd had a really dark period before. I credit her with saving me, essentially, and probably, probably saving me from something quite significant. And she found me. And from the moment I met her, she went, "You're fab. I love you. You're amazing. I love when you do this. This is great." She also told me the stuff I didn't do well, including receiving bad feedback. Um, but she was so motivational that I then found who I was, again, found my voice. And then when I went back into a law firm, um, I just thought, you know what, I am going to be fabulous. And I just carried on doing that. Not always, not everyone loved it, but most people were all right with it. There is a danger when you're an out gay man and you have a fairly keen sense of humour and you're expressive, that you can sometimes feel like you're the how can I put this? Sometimes I feel like I'm put in work social situations in order to entertain, and in order to be the person that wears the outfits, and so that we say we've got a Patrick, and to be the gay best friend. And sometimes I'll play up to that and sometimes I won't. But I have to say, with this firm and the firm before and the firm before, um, they were just great, right? They let me be myself, and they liked who I was, which really mattered as well. When you're sort of, as a kid, when you're othered and you're not part of the in crowd, it's really nice when people welcome you. It's just an unusual thing. Um, And what I have found is that it's really important for other people that I am who I am. I get things on LinkedIn every single day. We love that you're so authentic, that you're out. It's given me hope. I get people coming out to me weekly. I get people saying that because I'm, in this senior position, they feel they can be themselves a bit more. I started doing my nails.
Noticed,
Yeah,
yeah.
a year.
Noticed the first time we chatted actually
Yeah,
immediately.
I did that like a year or two ago. Um, and honestly, it, it's just transformed things, right? People talk to me that didn't before. And I do it because I like them, but also I do it so that someone can. see someone who's visibly being themselves, and so that the younger generation can point to me and go, well, Patrick does it, so why shouldn't I? And in this firm, we are seeing so many people emerge as, they say, this is my ethnicity, this is my race, this is my heritage, this is my sexual orientation, this is my gender, this is my background, this is where I came from, this is who I am, this is what's going on inside my head. These are the things that I physically can and cannot do, and I'm hashtag here for it. I think it's wonderful, and we have really deep, meaningful conversations now, and we know each other, right? And we create bonds, and I think it's one of the things I have to credit you with, Si, with TBD, what you have done through your work in shining a light on and rising up the voices that you have. You've turned this industry from a business to business, boring, 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 big £1 billion deal thing into people going, I'm a person, I'm an all right person, I have some vulnerabilities, I have some amazing strengths, I have some viewpoints. And you've don't want to get too emotional, but you've shifted the industry. You really have. Um, and I love it. I was really anti LinkedIn until I needed to use it for some of my projects. And I've just had it's really enriched my soul and the people I meet, and the people that now are in my life more than my friends as they're on my feed every morning. It's just wonderful, right? And LinkedIn, is such a powerful social media tool now. Don't get me wrong, I don't want more people to use it. There are enough of us publishing, but I do want more people to read, absorb, and then change, and better, and feel better about themselves.
That representation point didn't really mean that. I mean, I've been part of women's network groups and ethnicity groups and things when I was within law firms, and done my best to fly the flag for any kind of form of access and diversity, and done those things. But representation really for me showed up, I think, in the pandemic, and just saw it through LinkedIn, and people who I don't think it's easy to be first with the wall, Patrick. You've heard me say that before. I don't. You kind of alluded to it earlier. It's not always easy to be the person who shows up that way, but you do it. But then the payoff when other people come through and say, "Yeah, that's made it easy for me to be X," I think it's just wonderful.
As far as I'm aware, we're only on this planet once, right? So it's quite nice to have a bit of a, to do something, God, I don't want to sound like Mother Teresa, but to do something a bit good, and to just have that impact on someone else's life. I really like the idea that someone somewhere might be talking about something that I've done to someone else, and it just might be a moment for someone. I'm not Taylor Swift, right? That people aren't going to write my lyrics down or tattoo them across their bodies. Well, we know one person that might. But it's it's nice that you can have that effect, and yeah, and I think it's a lovely platform to use. I really love it.
The really big revelations for me over the last year or so, reflecting on it, is that I think that those corporate relationships we were talking about a minute ago were always predicated on this connection. And there's nothing. You just said earlier, there's nothing really new about those themes that are coming along. It's how you react to them, maybe. But I think that they, on some level, yeah, we've got procurement teams and RFPs and other things and loads of other reasons. But fundamentally, it comes down to: is this somebody you trust? Is it somebody whose opinion can abide? Is this somebody whose sense of humour is going to keep you going at 3 a.m. when the deal's going south? That connection point, I think, is huge for us in the industry, and I think that 2025 is going to see an explosion in greater levels of connection.
Well, look, I agree with you on the connection point, but I think that connection point and the ability to have that connection, pre social media, has relied on someone's hierarchy and the homogeneity that they have with the person to whom they're connecting, quite often with everybody else that's connecting. It's all looked a bit similar, hasn't it? And people have been excluded, and they've not been heard, they've not been in the room, they've not been able to influence or have a perspective. What LinkedIn has done is democratized the ability to disseminate what's going on inside your head to others. So you have people like Amelia Platten, you have Helen Pamela, you have Rena Palmer, you have Holly Cope, you have John Gregson, you have Emma, you have a load of them who are just bringing these different voices that would not have been heard before, right? And I think that people connect with that and go, I get that, that resonates. And I think that resonates far more than we've done a big £1 billion deal, and here are all the white faces that can work for you, and here's the big building that we're in, and here's how we smash the competition. I don't know that that's where people's hearts are. Having said that, we have just had an election in America, and maybe I've got that completely wrong, but it feels to me like people want to connect with people. But there's a wider bunch of people that are able to connect, and a wider bunch of people that want to connect. And I agree with you that there will be more stuff, particularly shout out practicing lawyers. Please use LinkedIn more. We want to know who you are. To choose someone, right? You need to know you need to know them, a bit about them, and you need to know what's different about them from the other people you could be choosing. LinkedIn is brilliant for that.
Maybe now's the right time to, well, two things. One, quick observation, then one, a quick announcement. I think the one thing that those people have got in common out of the top 25, when I look across the list, maybe even the top 100, is very few of them hold the purse strings on the marketing budget, Patrick. So
Yeah,
they have to use
yeah.
LinkedIn because they don't have any access or right or rationales to how to get their hands on being able to go and do something, equally flamboyant, but at a rugby club or whatever it might be. So we're going to extend the list this next time, and I haven't told anyone this yet, so I'm revealing it because you asking about it with your call for lawyers to take part. Please do, and if you're a comms person watching this, please send me the list of people that you want to have in there. Patrick, we're taking the list down to at least 500th, which we currently do. It's probably going to go down to 1,000th. Not that we're going to list everyone's name, but we are going to use their scores alongside their firm scores. So this is a
Oh,
bit
that,
of a reveal, right? Because we want to know which is more powerful,
mm.
right? Is it Patrick plus links? It is. It's personal brand plus corporate brand. We want to show that equation and how it's working. Jen Shipley, how she performs against Emma
Well,
Mitchell,
yeah.
right? I mean, well, but they've got a relationship that works.
Well, and like with Jen, you've never on a piece of paper 2 years have gone, tell this story, be really human, say everything. You will get clients. You've
No,
never have, and yet she does. And I think people connect because they go, "You're a human, right?" I see that. That's really interesting that you're going to extend out, and I'd love to see your analysis of um, people who are getting instructions for law. In that, I'd be really interested to know, what that's looking like, because that to me is the big win, particularly for mid-level associates, for example. They're not going to win the multi-billion-pound deal, but they might make the connection, they might get the coffee, and that to me is something that's useful, and just for people to sort of. I don't now. I can go into a room and someone will know me.
mm,
Sometimes, 3 times in the last week, that person has been really senior. And when I've looked them up on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh my gosh, that person knows who I am. Um, and I'm a back office middle manager, lower middle manager, right? I shouldn't be having any sort of influence. So if I've got the Linklaters brand behind me, but I do not have the I was going to say Billy Big person, business profile behind me, but I can do it. So um, for me, there's a lot around just having a bit of a thing, and the other thing I think your people have in common is, no offense to any of us, but we're all a bit. There's something about each of us that's a bit odd,
I'd agree. Kooky.
kooky. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but back in the '80s, there used to be those fraternity house movies, like Porky's and what have you. And there was always the house that there was the cool, there was the cool there was the cool jocks one, there was the cool sorority girls one, there was always a foreign one, and then there was always the really nerdy one. A
Right.
bit like that. But people connect with that. Imagine if you're one of the jocks or one of the sorority girls and you then actually get that voice out there. I think that might be quite interesting for people. Like, I'm really interested to know, what is it like to be part of the in crowd? What is it like to feel really confident in what you do? What is it like to just have those connections that you've got by reason of hierarchy or homogeneity or whatever it is? I think that's really interesting. I'd quite like to know, what is it like to talk about rugby all the time? What is it like to um, know what the finest wines are? I'm quite interested in that.
We've seen it a bit with it's a slightly removed analogy, but like Legal Geek, right?
Yeah.
It was a while ago, Legal Geek was definitely on the fringes, and I think the Legal Geek is like quite a mainstream event nowadays. Thousands of people go as well, but
It is.
it comes a time when the jocks don't want to be a jock anymore.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting about next year. Like, I think we're getting to early majority here, Patrick, in terms of adoption terms. People are seeing the benefits of it, and they're seeing millions of pounds of investment. Somebody who's in the top 20 said to me that they've won several £1 million worth of instructions. They
So
didn't come in the top 10, right? And I said, well, do you want to come in the top 10, or do you want to win millions of pounds worth of instructions? Which do you want? And they said, actually, upon reflection, they were quite happy with where they were in the table, right? And I think that's the balance, isn't it? I want to be famous enough to make it easier to do my job, and maybe not so famous enough that I get some of the difficult stuff that comes with being LinkedIn famous as well.
yeah, I can't walk down the street anymore. It's a nightmare.
Well, your stint on the top 10 continues. I've noticed this quarter. Seem to have having a bit of a bull run recently. So long may it
Well,
continue.
I was number 12 last one, up one, so I'm just
I
some.
can I can see what you're up to. And tell me a bit, just last thing, because I was really intrigued, and I'm not sure I got to the bottom of it still. Tell me about this like spin class kind of thing. What is there? Did I miss a trick by not ending up in your spin class years
You
ago?
did miss the trick by not being in the spin class. So, one of the reasons I stopped being a lawyer was because I couldn't get to a particular gym class on a Friday at 6 o'clock, because someone would always walk in at 5:30 with some not urgent piece of work that was then urgent and would take me out for the weekend. And that was just that was one of the factors that I just thought I just can't do the fee earning thing, and actually, and it was a class I loved. And so I became an instructor in '95, and for 22 years I taught fitness classes in and around central London in about, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 of the major gyms. I was a major player in the aerobic step, body pump, spin world. Yeah, yeah. And I at one point uh, I was doing 25 classes a week outside.
No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I did 7 mornings, 3 lunchtimes, and 5 evenings, and often back to back. So which would be doubles, and on Saturdays it was 4 in a row. I was skinny then. I was skinny, 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 and I loved it. I loved it because I could bring my whole self. I was energy. I'm obsessed with music. I loved being fit. I loved having the blood just pouring around your body, and I loved making people laugh. And I built this really strong community of um, participants, who became my friends, and because you'd see them 4 times a week, and lots of them would like harangue me, you need to make this harder. We don't like this music. Is the choreography new? And so they really kept me at the top of my game. So yeah, you definitely missed out on my spin. My spin class was something else. I have to say, it was even quoted in the not very nicely in the Saturday Times by Camilla Long, uh, who was talking about the fact that I was playing Lady Gaga. I remember. Yeah, and I had so many people go, "Is that you that she's mentioning?" And it was. So then I had the brilliant thing the following week of stopping the class halfway through and saying, "Are you Camilla Long? Did you write that article?" That was fun. But yeah, I was paper newspaper famous for 3 minutes there.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Actually, it's always a joy spending time with you, and I hope that we get to do something together face to face very
I
soon.
love.
If you are somebody who's dialed into this episode and you haven't met Patrick before, I could not encourage you more to follow him on LinkedIn. It will
Please
be
do.
a great reward for your kind of couple of minutes there. He gives so much back to the community. Please go and have a look. And then, if you like what you've heard, then obviously share the episode with friends, tell everyone about it. Maybe give But Is It Legal a follow as well. Patrick, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely.
And good luck with whatever you're up to this weekend as well.
Thank you so much.